How's it going, everybody? Welcome to the 1IQ Football Talk podcast. Brendon and Sterling coming to you for yet another week of football action. First off, Sterling, how you doing, my friend? I know you were a little bit under the weather last week and pretty much majority of this week.
Yeah, man, this shit's clinging on to me. Like, I'm better than I was last weekend for sure, but still feeling pretty rough and still rocking a bad cough. So I apologize if I go into any coughing fits throughout uh, this pod today, but I'll do my best to keep it under control.
Yeah, well, need to get you back with those singing pipes. But yeah, a lot of interesting stuff to talk about this week as we get ready for kind of the final week before trade deadline day, which comes up on October 31st, which just so happens to be Halloween. And obviously, we're going to definitely chat a little bit more about that a little bit later. But first, as always, what we are going to do is take a look here at the upcoming games of the week. But first, let's talk about that Buffalo Bills Tampa Bay Buccaneers game. And, you know, for a team like we both picked the Bills heading into this game. And I don't think either of us thought this game was going to be this close or this kind of lack of competitive from both teams. And you said it perfectly last week where you went, Josh Allen always seems to play down to the quarterbacks that he's playing. Like he plays to the exact same level that each of the opposite quarterback that he plays, and he kind of did that same thing with Baker Mayfield this week where it was,
hmm
you know what, like he threw for 324 yards, two touchdowns, still had that interception, was sacked a pair of times, threw the ball over 40 times. Same with Baker, but Baker 237 for two touchdowns, no interceptions, and getting sacked three times. So realistically, the only difference is one guy had about 90 yards more than the other, but other than that, it was pretty much an even playing field from these two quarterbacks.
Yeah, and I mean that's been Josh Allen's curse. Even going back to the week before, it looked like we were watching two Mac Jones play, and then on Thursday it looked like it was just two Baker Mayfields. And there's been a lot of discussions like this, the elite quarterback list in the NFL right now, where usually by this time of year it's growing. It seems to be shrinking this year because guys like Josh Allen and Justin Herbert, it's really hard to include them in that conversation anymore because they keep faltering and not looking good consistently.
Yeah, that's definitely a conversation we're going to have in a little bit of time because it is one of those things where, again, going back to what you're saying, like it seems like every year that list gets bigger at this time of the year of like, oh,
Yep.
like who's the guys that aren't elite that we're talking about. But yeah, this year definitely
Yeah.
seems to be
But
shrinking.
then you got to feel for Baker Mayfield in that game too, because he threw a picture perfect Hail Mary pass at the end of that game, landed dead center in the middle of the end zone, and not a single Buccaneer receiver was able to get their hands on it.
Yeah.
Now I know there's been a lot of talks of oh, there was pass interference calls and things like that, but even so, like they weren't in position to make those catches anyway. None of them got to the spot and turned around in time, and it was very disappointing because you don't see Hail Mary passes that perfect very often unless it's Aaron Rodgers throwing it. So you've seen a lot of them, but we don't see a lot around the league throughout the year, and I don't blame Baker Mayfield for being upset at that because that would have won the game. They
Yep.
were only down by six. You get that catch, that ties the game, and it's an extra point to win.
Hmm. No, totally. And the worst part about that is that Baker Mayfield, like I know you really don't like Baker Mayfield. I'm a lot higher on him than you are, but with this Tampa Bay Buccaneers team, like he is definitely had a resurgence. Obviously, he has quality weapons in Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, really good. The running game has been completely lackluster for the Buccaneers this year. It's been
Mhm.
terrible. But Baker Mayfield, I wouldn't say has cost this team, the amount of wins that I would have thought. Like the fact that the Buccaneers are 3-4 right now, if you would have told me that like heading into week 8 after this Thursday night game, they would be 3-4. I would say you're probably lying. I would say they might have only had one win coming into this, but this Buccaneers team is a lot better than we're giving them credit to, and I think a lot of it is the success of Baker Mayfield and the way that he's been playing for them.
Yeah, he's been doing his job. He's in a perfect system. I said that at the start of the year. Like, I don't like him as a quarterback. I've never liked his personality and his mindset. That's just me. That's the type of guy I am to the type of quarterback he is. But I knew going in that he had found a system that was going to work for him, and he's shown that. Luckily, the Bucks are also in a division right now that is really struggling to for any team to find traction. And so even sitting at 3-4, they're only a game back of the Falcons, who week in, week out, it's win one, lose one, win one, lose one. So it's still anybody's division here. And the Saints, they've hung with the rest of the division at this point, but I think we're going to see them start to fall off here pretty soon. So I think it's going to become a two-man race. And, Baker Mayfield puts them in the best position to possibly take that division going forward. But yeah, they got to do something about that run game, because you can't just rely on Godwin and Evans all the time. We've already seen both of them miss games this year because they're relied on so heavily. Baker Mayfield's been playing through a twisted knee at this point as well, so he's hurting. Like, they got to do something. Maybe they're one of these teams that needs to make a splash and go out there and try and get a guy like a Derrick Henry at the trade deadline here and just fill that one hole that they have to help make them more complete and push towards the playoffs.
Yeah, it is going to be really interesting to see what this team does. And then obviously for the Buffalo Bills, again, it's just like Josh Allen just kind of seems fundamentally broken this year. For a lot of years, I was always very much like Josh Allen is not the guy, he's not the guy.
Mhm.
And for the last two, I've kind of flipped that going, okay, you know what? I have to admit I was wrong. And for those last 2 years, I was wrong. But Josh Allen right now he's just kind of been one of those guys where it's like you're walking in every single week and you believe that he's going to be able to win the game, but you're also sitting back biting your nails going, oh my god, but is he going to be good Josh Allen or is he going to be bad Josh Allen? And when Josh Allen is bad, he's easily one of the worst quarterbacks in the NFL. I don't think that
Mhm.
was a bad performance by Josh Allen. It was just one of those situations where it was like, dude, this is not what you want to have happen walking into the playoffs, because if you go up against, for instance, like the Chiefs,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but like you're gonna get dominated if you continue this play.
And
But
not just the Chiefs, but the Chiefs, the Bengals, like,
mm,
who we'll see what happens when they travel to Miami to play the Dolphins as well. But it almost feels like the issue right now is Josh Allen is trying to do too much.
yeah,
It's like he's shouldering this team and thinks he has to be Patrick Mahomes, when they've shown in the past that they don't have to be. Like they can be a more complete team and still win games more consistently. And it's almost like he's trying to reach up and be in that conversation of, oh, I'm just as good as Pat Mahomes, and it's hurting him.
without a doubt it is, and it's only making things worse for this Buffalo Bills team. But
Hmm.
we'll have this conversation of the quarterbacks a little bit later. Let's get into our picks of the week. So the first game that we're going to talk about is one that was a lot harder for me to choose than I thought it was going to be. It's the Cowboys and Rams. The Rams heading into Dallas. For this first game, I have the Cowboys winning this one, but to be honest, I am not confident in that pick whatsoever. The Rams, again, kind of like the Buccaneers, have been playing a lot better than what I thought they would have this year. And Dallas, they kind of have that feeling of like a glass cannon to me, where they could be really, really good until they have a little bit of pressure thrown back at their face. And I feel like this Rams team could really go out there and apply a lot of good pressure towards the Cowboys. But I just feel like there's just something that's tugging on the back of my shirt, going, yeah, but the Rams also aren't that good this year. They've lost to some really bad teams, and it just feels like the Cowboys are gonna sneak away with like a last second field goal. It just kind of has that feeling to me.
Yeah, I agree. This was a tough one to choose, but then ultimately, I don't have faith in Dak Prescott and these Cowboys. That's what makes it tough for me. And then I'm looking at the Rams, and I think this Rams team is going to come in angry. They feel like they got robbed last week in that loss against Pittsburgh. There were some bad calls at the end of the game that didn't go their way, but ultimately, that their kicker missed 2 field goals and an extra point, which you make all 3 of those, and it's a tie game at the end, and your team has a shot to win, and you're not really blaming the refs at that point. So, I mean, I don't know who they picked up for their kicker this week, but hopefully it's better than Brett Maher was, because he did not look good last week. He cost them that game, really. The offense was able to run their game plan against that Steelers defense, which makes me think that they're going to be able to do the same thing against the Cowboys defense. And I think the Rams are going to come in with a little bit more of an edge and ultimately be able to knock the Cowboys off as they continue their slide into mediocrity.
Which we see pretty much every single year because it's the Jerry Jones run Cowboys, and that's all they ever seem to be. But yeah, that again, I don't like picking the Cowboys. I would like to pick the Rams. I just got this nagging feeling that's gonna be that last second field goal. But now moving over to a game that I actually thought was a lot easier to pick, where I have the Vikings, not the Falcons. I don't know where the hell the Falcons came from, but the Vikings taking on the Packers, and I have the Vikings winning that game going into Green Bay. The Vikings, they have struggled this year, and they have definitely not looked like the Vikings of last year, but they've also put together a couple of decent games pretty much ever since that Bears game that they played. They've really started to turn a corner, obviously, on this 2-game win streak, and the Packers and Jordan Love have sucked, and it is so much fun to watch, and I love it. And I'm not letting my Bears biasy choose the Packers, or watching and hoping the Packers are going to lose, but it definitely doesn't hurt.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, the Vikings are coming in hot right now. They won a primetime game with Kirk Cousins against the 49ers.
Yep.
And so they've got to be coming in happy and looking to just continue that and just and put a beat down on the Viking or on the Packers, because division rivals. It's always nice to beat up on them. It's it's tough for the Vikings right now though, because they lost Justin Jefferson, went on to IR, and a lot of talk was, well, if they're not able to pull out these wins, then maybe it's time to move on from Kirk Cousins and see what you can get back.
Yep.
And then they go and they win 2 games. It's like, well, shit, now we can't really shop him around at this point. Jordan Addison has been taken off and showing that, when Justin Jefferson comes back, those two could be a formidable duo in the league. Of course, Addison has to stay healthy. There were a couple of scares last week where he went down, and we were like, oh, is this another wide receiver going down? But he kept coming back into the game, so...
I'll tell you this. If I actually did make that trade with you for Jordan Addison a couple weeks ago, he would have gone on to IR, because that's just the way my team goes.
Yeah, that's the luck you've been having, man. I even had him on my bench last week, and I still won by over 50 points. Like it, I just been stockpiling. Guys that put up points, and nobody's come knocking for a trade yet. I don't know.
Yeah,
At some point, somebody's gonna have to. But yeah, the Vikings are just rolling hot right now, and I don't see any reason to pick the Packers against them, a team that has looked very lackluster in their first season with Jordan Love. I'm curious to see what they do in the offseason, though, whether they're going to continue riding with Love, or if they're going to blow it up and try to start fresh.
Ride with
Yeah, I'm
love,
picking
baby.
the
Ride
Vikings.
with love.
Yeah,
We riding with Jordan.
you say that until he somehow
Shut
manages to
shut
turn
up.
around.
Stop.
Hey, I'm looking forward to week 17, Jordan Love against Tyson Bagent.
Again, that'll be a conversation for a little bit later.
Right. But yeah,
Um,
Vikings.
Vikings, yeah. So now Falcons over the Titans for me, while the Falcons and Titans play. The Titans right now, they just look like they are the worst team or one of the worst teams in the NFL. They have just been abruptly bad. Like it has been very very rough for them the entire season. They're a team that we kind of felt like it was going to be the Broncos, but Derrick Henry is likely going to be traded this week. Um, I heard a lot of rumblings that it's likely going to be, and you're not going to like this, Baltimore for him
Hmm.
heading up there, which I think would be an actual perfect spot for Derrick Henry. But yeah, this Titans team, DeAndre Hopkins, he's instantly regretting his choice heading to Tennessee this offseason, like we all kind of said he would be when we initially saw where he was signing. It was like, oh,
Yeah.
you're going to play with Ryan Tannehill? Great. But Will Levis making his first NFL start, the player that was looked so highly at this season in the draft process. A lot of people thought he was going to go top 10, ends up falling all the way to the second round. Didn't have to wait too long in the second round, but was still there for quite a while. But yeah, for me, the Falcons, when you look at Desmond Ritter, I don't think he's the guy, but this Falcons team has just been a hell of a lot better than the Titans, and I don't think the Tennessee Titans are going to be able to do enough in this game, especially if Bijan Robinson is healthy and doesn't have those headache type symptoms that keeps him out of the game. Um, I'm not a big fan of their head coach in Arthur Smith. I think he's completely mismanaging their entire team. But with that being said, I think the Falcons walk away with a win here.
Yeah, and I think you hit the nail on the head there. The coaching for me is the problem in Atlanta right now. It's not so much Desmond Ritter. Um, we talked about him last year before the draft and how he was one of the guys who had one of the biggest ceilings in that draft last year, and I still think he has that potential. It's just he needs a better system around him at this point. And yeah, hopefully Bijan Robinson has gotten over. I assume it was some kind of a flu because it is going around right now, everywhere. So that is my guess. That's what that was. I'm betting he'll be back this week, and they've been showing flashes here and there. Whether it be Drake London or Kyle Pitts. They've been getting other areas involved. They do still have Algier as their backup running back as well. I saw a ridiculous rumor that Derrick Henry was in the mix to go to the Falcons as well, and I was like, why? Why?
Yeah.
Like you're just collecting running backs at this point. What's the point? So
It,
I
it's it's
thought
like
that was
trying to collect Infinity Stones. It's like
right.
what are you
It was
doing?
a stupid clickbait article, that
Yeah.
one. I was like, no, he's not. That's not happening.
It's
Um,
like the Colts saying we're gonna try to go after Derrick Henry when we
right.
have Jonathan Taylor and Zach Moss. It's like
Yeah.
no.
No, not happening. I am excited to see what Will Levis can do in this Tennessee offense. It's unfortunately for him, he's climbing into a dumpster fire and trying to make something fancy out of it. It's not going to look pretty, but we've been talking for like 2 years now that it's time to move on. Even last year, we were saying like, where's Malik Willis?
Yeah.
Like, let's get him in there. And now he's not even in the discussion. Like, I hope at some point they move on from him and give him a shot somewhere else in the league, so he's not just riding third string
Well,
with
with
nothing to do.
with Malik Willis though, when he did play last year, he looked horrible.
Well, he was a rookie,
Yeah, but even
and
then,
not,
like in his first couple of games, he looked bad for a rookie.
but I mean, I think you could put anybody in there. Like he put Bryce Young there, put C.J. Stroud in Tennessee. They're gonna look terrible in that offense.
Yeah.
It's a
Well,
terrible team.
like I'll say this, Malik Willis, I was never high on him.
No.
Like the fact that people were talking about him being a top 5 pick a couple years ago because he handed out a couple of shirts at Indianapolis and then he had a really good day. Like he had a great underwear bowl is
Mhm.
what he had. And people are like, "Oh my god, this guy, he's going to be a top 5 quarterback." And I'm like, "No, no, no, let's hold up. This guy is a 4th round pick
Yeah.
at the very very best." and they're like, he's gonna be top 5. I was like, if you think this dude is a top 5 quarterback, either you are just buying into hype that people are throwing your way,
Mhm.
or you didn't watch any of his tape. I personally don't think Malik Willis is that good of a quarterback, and when he did play, I thought he looked terrible. But yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Either way, I'm looking forward to Will Levis. It's going to be interesting. I think that this might be one of those games where we see certain players not on the field for Tennessee as well. So it's likely he's been practicing with second stringers. He might be playing with a lot of the second stringers because if Derrick Henry is going to be on the move, I don't think he'll be playing. If DeAndre Hopkins is going to be traded, I don't think he'll be playing. And so these are your two biggest playmakers essentially, and he's going to have to make something out of that. And with the Falcons essentially in the driver's seat for that NFC South right now, sitting at 4-3, the only winning record, they really just have to keep their foot on the pedal and keep winning. And so I think we'll see that this week. We'll see them bounce back and have a good game. Bijan Robinson should be playing, and finally the Falcons will win a game on the road
yeah.
because that has also been their curse so far is they have not been able to win a game on the road yet, and they need to do that because if they make the playoffs, they're going to be playing on the road,
Yep.
and so they got to start finding ways to win outside of Atlanta.
Without a
And I
doubt.
think
Now,
this week will be the first time.
without a doubt. Now moving on to another NFC AFC South battle where we have the New Orleans Saints taking on the Indianapolis Colts, and this was another game that was really tough for me to pick. There was a bunch of these games. I know like every week we'll say there was a couple of tough games, but ultimately we can kind of sit down, discuss it, and this was kind of one of those weeks where it was like even while discussing it, like I'm still feeling like I'm gonna flip flop between this one. I currently have the Saints to beat the Colts, but again, it's one of those things where I'm not really confident in that because the Saints have looked so bad, especially with Derek Carr. Like he hasn't looked good this year. The Saints defense has looked good, but the Colts offense, are they going to be good enough to do much against this Saints defense? Obviously, Zach Moss and Jonathan Taylor are a fearsome running back tandem, and I think they're doing some really good things there. But you also have Gardner Minshew as the quarterback there, and it's just kind of gonna be a little bit of a weird situation ultimately, and I just think that Saints defense is just gonna be a little bit too much for the Colts offense, and that's what gives me the edge for the Saints over the Colts.
Fair enough. I have a feeling I'm going to be able to sway you on this one.
Hmm.
It wasn't a difficult choice for me. I looked at last week and how the Saints performed. It wasn't great. And I looked at what the Colts managed to do. They hang tough with one of the best defenses in the league last week, in the Browns. And, it came down to the end of the game. And I really do think the Colts deserve to win that game. And we haven't seen it since he came back. I think this is the week Jonathan Taylor is going to go off. We've been waiting for it since he came back, and it takes a couple weeks to get back into that rhythm. I think this is going to be the week. I just have this feeling, Jonathan Taylor is finally going to go off this week. They were able to finally get Michael Pittman Jr. involved last week in the pass game, and it, you get that going as a 1-2 punch, and Gardner Minshew could look like one of the best quarterbacks this week, as a result of that. And I think the Colts are going to come out with a chip on their shoulder, much like I was saying about the Rams earlier. And they're just going to go, hey, we hung with the Browns, which is one of the best defenses. The Saints aren't as good on defense. They're good. They've got a good defense, but it's not as good as the Browns. And I just don't think they're going to be able to keep up with the Colts and how much they can score, especially with how bad that Saints offense looks. And now they're missing Chris Olave, I assume. I mean, dude just got arrested a couple days ago. I don't see him playing tomorrow.
I,
I
I
don't
I
know what
saw
Derek
a
Carr is
meme
doing to
on
these
that.
wide receivers that makes them want to drive really fast and just
Yeah.
get the fuck away from him.
It
But it's
I saw a meme about that where it was that classic pulled over. Do you know who I am? No? Well, I'm kind of a big deal.
Yeah.
And it's like, but again, like, what are these guys doing, man? It's just, it's a joke, really. But yeah, that's gonna be a very tough game. But taking a look here at one that I don't think is gonna be a very tough game, we have the Miami Dolphins taking on the New England Patriots, and I think it's pretty easily gonna be a Miami Dolphins win. We've seen the Miami Dolphins struggle against some of these better teams, but they dominate these really poor teams. And I think for Miami, this is going to be just another game of complete and utter domination. Whether Tyreek Hill is good to go or not, I think the Dolphins are going to go out full swinging and just full action, ready to just let loose.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, uh, not to take away from the Patriots, they did manage to beat the Bills last week, and so within their division, the Patriots are not doing too badly at this point.
Yep.
But yeah, you said it. That's exactly it. The Dolphins, they got tested and they did not hold up to it. And I think that is ultimately going to be what hamstrings them as the season goes on is they play really well against bad teams and they just cannot seem to get it going against the good teams. And so they're going to look good the rest of the season when they're playing these bad teams. They're going to make the playoffs. And then I think we're going to see them kind of collapse in the playoffs, unfortunately, because they just don't have what it takes to hang with these top tier teams in head-to-head battles. But yeah, I do think we're going to see them just crush the Patriots as sort of an extra insult to the Bills, and try and build some momentum for when Buffalo comes into Miami. Um, I can't see any reason to pick the Patriots in this game, so I also am going Dolphin.
Well, and the fact that the Patriots have always struggled going into Miami and playing Miami, like, even when Tom Brady was there, they would always look at this and go, fuck, like, we just can't really win this. And, like, we're
Yeah.
always seemingly struggling with these types of games. And it's going to be really interesting to see. But now moving over to the battle for New York slash New Jersey, while we see the Jets take on the Giants. And again, this was not a really tough game for me. Both teams have weird quarterback situations, but one has an elite defense with a quarterback that can occasionally do some really good things in the Jets, so that's why I have them over the Giants. The Giants have just been they've just been a dumpster fire this year. The Jets, they are finding ways to win, whether it's, an easy win or it's a really rough and tough win. They're staying in with teams, and the Giants, I just don't think whether it's Daniel Jones or Tyrod Taylor going out there, they're both gonna struggle against this Jets defense.
Yeah, I agree. This is going to be an interesting one just because, it's both New York teams. They're essentially both playing a home game. It's the crowd is going to be just rowdy as can be. Those Jets fans can get wild. Um, but like you said, it's just that even with the Giants managing to pull out a win last week with Tyrod Taylor, they only did it with 14 points.
Yeah, yeah,
And they don't inspire confidence that they're going to be able to put a lot of points on the board. And this Jets defense is just good, and I can't see any situation where the Giants are able to pull out a win here unless Sauce Gardner goes down in the first quarter or something with an injury.
yeah.
Then maybe they might be able to squeak out a win at the end. But ultimately, I do agree. I think it's going to be the Jets winning this one, especially, trying to keep pace with the Bills and the Dolphins now. They really want to keep up with that rather than falling down into the basement with the Patriots.
Yeah, and especially with how Aaron Rodgers has been recovering and going through his recovery process, people are still saying that he should be in a walking boot here at the moment. But, he's out there last week on the
Hmm.
field, no walking boot, just in casual shoes, throwing passes out on the field. Obviously, that doesn't mean he's ready to go back out there tomorrow and play, but the fact that he
No, and I
is
think
where he's at is it's only like, man, if this Jets team can just hang in there, and let's just
yep,
say you get to the end of November into that December month, and Aaron Rodgers is able to come back, and you're able to be maybe one or two games above 500. With Aaron Rodgers coming back, that's a team that could sneak into the playoffs, and
yep.
could very easily become a Super Bowl favorite just by one guy coming back.
Oh, I know. It's absolutely crazy. And I don't think there's going to be a whole lot of talk about either of these two teams tomorrow. I think all of it around this game is going to center around the fan and the fan base. And then I did hear that there's a planned, you know, throw the ball around with Eli Manning and Aaron Rodgers before the game. That's getting way more hype than even the game itself is. And so it's going to be, let's watch Eli Manning and Aaron Rodgers play pass together, and then, oh, the game's starting. Let's go watch something else.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Let's watch these two Hall of Famers, just chuck the football around, shoot the shit, and
Yeah.
away we go. But now moving into the Jacksonville Jaguars and your Pittsburgh Steelers, I'll let you take the reins on this one.
I mean, both teams are coming in hot right now. The Steelers beat the Ravens before the bye week, had a decent bye week, came out and actually looked decent for more than just the final 5 minutes of the game against the Rams, managed to put up more than 20 points finally, which was nice to see as well. And it looked like they were starting to click a little more. Kenny Pickett's getting more confident in audibling when it's necessary. Matt Canada obviously still doesn't like it because, we saw it on that Najee Harris touchdown. It was obviously a jet sweep again on the goal line. And Kenny Pickett was like, all the guys are lined up right there where we're trying to run the ball. This is a 5-yard loss waiting to happen. I'm just going to hand it off to Najee on this side. Oh, look, touchdown. And Matt Canada's in the press box going, that's not what I called. It's like, motherfucker, you got a touchdown, not a field goal. If they had run your play, we would have got a field goal on that drive instead. So,
Now, chances are your guy would have fumbled the ball. They would have taken it back and scored a touchdown. Let's be real here.
I mean, I haven't seen many of our jet sweep guys fumble the ball.
Yeah, but
So
it
I
would
don't
just
see
have
that.
those types of moments where Matt Canada,
Yeah.
he would be like, at least it
Yeah.
was my play.
Yeah, exactly. That he would have been satisfied with field goal as long as they were running his play.
Yeah.
But if Kenny Pickett can keep doing that, especially in the final 5 to 7 minutes of the game, if it's a close game, make those calls yourself. And you've shown that you have the football knowledge, that you're able to read that defense and what they're planning against two good defenses in the Rams and the Ravens, those last two games. And so trust yourself. Even if Matt Canada doesn't trust you, it's clear Mike Tomlin does, because we haven't been hearing Mike Tomlin going, he can't be making those types of decisions himself. They need to keep rolling with that. And this defense, still healthy right now, and so they're keeping the team in a lot of these games, and that is the key. If it's within a score come the end of the game and Kenny Pickett can get that ball, I'm confident the Steelers can pull out some wins. On the other side of it, the Jags are coming in hot. They've won 4 in a row. Trevor Lawrence is looking good. They have not lost yet this month of October. ETN is making a case for being the best running back this year, especially after Nick Chubb went down several weeks ago. Like, this is a tough one for me to choose, because when I'm choosing against the Steelers, they seem to be winning. And so I want to choose against them just because I want them to keep winning. But this is Trevor Lawrence's first trip to Pittsburgh. He played against Pitt in college, but he has not played against the Steelers in Pittsburgh. And I think the fans are going to be fired up. We're on a 2-game win streak. We've been looking better. The offense is finally starting to click. We're seeing some more actual plays being called instead of just constant jet sweeps and screens. This was a really tough one for me to pick, man. And ultimately, it's coming down to my fan bias, and I'm going to pick the Steelers at home against the Jags. I don't think the Jags are ready to sweep a month of wins yet. They're due a loss in October, and it's going to come this week against Steelers. But this is a preview of Wild Card Weekend, I think. And the Wild Card game is going to take place in Jacksonville, because they're likely going to win that division. And so it's, we'll win this one. I don't know if we'll win that wild card one, unfortunately. But this has all the makings of a really good game, in my opinion.
This is definitely hopefully going to be one of the better games this week. I am going with Jacksonville. Just still, I've said this multiple times. If Matt
Yep.
Canada is calling the plays, I'm not completely sold on Kenny Pickett yet. Has he looked better? Sure. Has he wowed me? No, not ever. And it's one of those things right now with that combination against a team that is fairly good. Granted, their defense isn't elite. It isn't one of those barn burners, but they are able to get after quarterbacks with Josh Allen. Um, and for me at the moment, I just think Jacksonville, they are the hot team right now. They're going to look at this Pittsburgh Steelers team. You know, Trevor Lawrence is going to walk in there, look at Matt Canada's little suite that he's in, see his hat, and go, that's an idiot right there. I've got a
Mm-hmm.
Super Bowl winning head coach calling my plays. And I think it's going to be, honestly, Doug Peterson versus Matt Canada more than anything. And I think if you're going to have to ask me who's going to win in that battle, I'm throwing 1,000 down on Doug Peterson to win versus Matt Canada. And I think that's ultimately what it's going to boil down to and come to. And that's kind of why I'm choosing. Yeah, it's in Pittsburgh, but it's a midday game. If this was prime time, I would have maybe a little bit of a difference of opinion just because those Steeler fans seem to go kind of Buffalo Bills mode in that prime time slot. I'm not saying they aren't a rabid fan base even during those midday games, but I just don't think they're going to be as intense if it was like a prime time late game type situation. So for that reason, that's why I'm going to pick the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Yeah, that's fair. And I mean, I agree. You put anybody up against Matt Canada, you're going to pick the other person. And and that was why I was making so much of a point that, you know, in the final 5 minutes of the games, Kenny Pickett has looked as good as some of these elite quarterbacks we see in the league right now. He's shown flashes, and that's where I like him. The previous 3 quarters and 3 quarters of the fourth quarter, like, it's not great. But then as soon as it hits that 5 minute warning and we're within a strike of winning the game, he just seems to go into this whole different mode. If he can find a way to play like that a whole game, the Steelers offense will be unstoppable. But ultimately, like you said, it's Matt Canada has to go. And that is what's going to really be the deciding factor for me in the future. I'm not sold on Kenny Pickett yet either, but I'm not ready to throw the white flag in with him, the towel in, because I haven't seen him with a real offensive coordinator yet, with somebody who actually knows how to call a game, and
Oh yeah,
that's what
I'm
I
not
want to
ready
see.
to throw in the white flag for him either. It's just at the
Right?
moment I just haven't seen anything from him that I sit back and go, "Wow, this has the
Yeah,
makings of a guy who's going to win a Super Bowl for me."
yeah. And I just want to see him with a real coordinator before I make that decision one way or another, whether Kenny Pickett's the guy for the next decade.
Yeah, without a doubt. And but yeah, I kind of figured that's how our conversation about this game would go. But moving
Yeah.
forward, where we see the Eagles take on the Commanders, and right now this should be an easy Eagles win. But last time these two teams went up against each other, it went to overtime. But with the way that the Commanders have been playing the last couple weeks, falling to both the Giants and the Bears,
Yep.
looking just horrendous. I don't know how the Eagles could not win this one in spectacular fashion.
I mean, it's possible. We saw it last year too, where it was the Commanders that upset that undefeated streak for the Eagles. But the Eagles have already had that setback this year. They had themselves a good bounce back game against the Dolphins last week, and I think they're going to go into this week looking to make a statement. Especially after the 49ers losing 2 weeks in a row now. The Eagles are sitting there going, okay, this is our conference. We need to make the rest of the teams in the NFC understand that this week by going in and dismantling this Washington Commanders team and showing them that you need to come and bring your A game if you want to even have a chance to hang with us. And I think that's what we're going to see. Like, I expect some pretty massive stat lines. This is likely one of those games where I'm going to be looking to put together some same game parlays and make some money, hopefully, because I really do think the Eagles are just going to destroy this Eagles team that, like you said, or this Commanders team. They've looked bad. You lost to the Giants. You lost to the Bears. Like, you had such high hopes at the start of the season. You were looking good, and you've just completely fallen apart since then. And
Yeah,
it's
But we could also go back to what you were saying there, the Eagles beating the shit out of the Eagles. Because we have seen them kind of do
They
that
do.
this year,
They
yeah.
beat themselves for sure. But I mean, we talked about it in a game earlier. This could be one of those games where the Commanders, we might not see Chase Young, we might not see Montez Sweat because those guys could be on their way out with this trade deadline looming on Tuesday, and so the defense could be depleted as a result, which is just going to make Jalen Hurts, AJ Brown, Dallas Goddard, Devonta Smith, they're all going to be going, oh yes, let's show the Dolphins how it's done when you want to run up the score. We're not just going to have one guy with over 100 yards. We're going to have four.
Yeah. So funny enough, like I was just as I typically do through this is a little off topic. I'm just scrolling through Twitter and PFF posted highest passer rating when being targeted with a minimum of 30 targets this season. Coming in at fourth place is George Kittle with 135.7.
Yep.
In third place is Mark Andrews with 137.2. Coming in at second with 143.4 is Tyreek Hill, and coming in
Yep.
at first place with 143.8, DJ Moore.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
was expecting to hear Travis Kelce in there somewhere, but yeah.
yeah. DJ Moore, ergo best wide receiver in football. Case rested. I'm gonna throw my Chicago meatball out after that one. Okay, moving forward. Just sorry, a little bit ADHD, but I think that's very, very funny to think about. Yeah, the Bears have one of the best wide receivers in football, which feels weird coming out of my mouth.
Well, we knew that going into the season. The problem is they can't get anything else going. Granted, your running back room has just been decimated. Injury after injury. And then Justin Fields going down. The defense has been suffering injuries all year, but
They've been
I
getting
mean,
better. We'll
from
talk
week
we'll talk
one,
about
though,
the Bears later. Yeah.
yeah,
So now looking at the game that holds the first three picks in the draft, where we see the Texans, C.J. Stroud and Will Anderson, who were picked 2 and 3, take on pick number 1 in Bryce Young and the Panthers. The Texans have looked a hell of a lot better this year, and for me, the Panthers have just looked really, really bad. And I think this is going to be one of those games for C.J. Stroud where he's going to walk up against that Panthers team and go, "You guys done messed up, boy." And
hmm
he's going to drop a lethal game on them. And Will Anderson, he's gonna like CJ Stroud, he's gonna be getting into Will Anderson's ear going, you see that little bitch over on the other side? That 5'11" midget playing quarterback for, the Panthers? Take him out. Go
yep,
get him. And we could see Will Anderson looking at his boy CJ and going, "I'm riding with you. I'm going to do everything that I possibly can." I think the Texans are going to demolish the Panthers. And the Panthers are just going to be sitting back going, "Oh no, we messed up."
yeah. I have to agree. I mean, DJ Stroud's probably going, yeah, you guys done messed up. Thank you for messing up. I'm glad I'm not in that dumpster fire of an organization. I'm glad you didn't take me, and I'd rather be playing in Houston. Um, but yeah, the Texans have looked much better than the Panthers, and we all talked about it at draft time. We've talked about it throughout the season here on how big of a gamble that was to trade up and take pick 2 and 3.
Yep.
And now other teams around the league are going, oh man, maybe this 2 picks in the top 3 is the way to rebuild and turn our team around quick. Maybe that's the way we got to go in the future.
You get your
And
you get your superstar quarterback, and you get your superstar quarterback of the defense in an elite edge rusher who was just
right?
casually nicknamed the Terminator for his play. It's like,
Yep.
maybe this is a good strategy.
Exactly. And it's working for them, and I think it's just going to keep rolling this week. I don't see any plausible way that the Panthers can win this game. Like, they have just looked bad all year long. There's a reason they have been, our bottom ranked team the entire season, and they will likely remain there. Every week that goes by, it gets closer and closer and more likely that we could see winless team again in the NFL.
I
Which
love
is
it.
good for you
I
because your
love it.
Bears keep winning, so you're no longer looking at getting the 1 and 2 pick anymore,
Which I'm kind of a little bit annoyed at. Like
right?
to be perfectly honest with you, we just talked about the team that had the second and third overall pick and how
Hmm.
good that team has performed. Obviously, they had a head coach coming in who brought in basically who was able to draft his guys. It was okay, you know what? I understand this is a league where it is quarterback centric. You need a quarterback. I'm going to take CJ Stroud, who I thought was the better quarterback coming into this draft anyways. And he's going to go, but I'm not going to move away from my philosophy. We're going to trade up so we can get the best defensive player in this draft in Will Anderson and just go, you know what? I'm setting up both of my sides and we can have a guy on both sides of the team that we can go, we're going to build around this guy. And for the Bears, again, we're moving into a conversation that we'll have later. So I'll talk about that later. Gosh darn it. Fucking ADHD, man. Especially when you throw an energy drink in me. God damn. Seahawks taking on the Cleveland Browns, and in a game that if you would have talked to me about this 2 weeks ago, I would have been, oh, Seahawks immediately, immediately. But the Browns have been sneaky decent the last couple weeks. Just they obviously, it's kind of clear that they probably have the best defense in football right now. The Cleveland Browns do, but their offense without Deshaun Watson is actually doing something decent. You have PJ Walker as the quarterback. A battle of 4-2 teams here. In Seattle, I think is the reason why I'm giving a little bit more of the edge to Seattle in this one. But I wouldn't be surprised if Cleveland snuck out a win in this one. They have quietly been probably the best team in that AFC North.
This was one of the toughest ones for me this week. Because the Browns, like I said earlier, I don't think they deserved to win that game last week. I feel like the Colts should have won that game. And yeah, their defense has been lights out. Myles Garrett he's been all over the field, but that's just it. Like you take him out of that equation, this defense drops down like 5-6 spots in the ranking. It's tough. Um, and the Seahawks, they've hung with some of these better teams, the Bengals included. And I think we're going to see more of that this week. It is in Seattle. The Seahawks are, fighting for their lives, as are the Browns. But I don't have as much faith in PJ Walker to keep doing what he's been doing. Mind you, I didn't have faith in Deshaun Watson anyway. It doesn't surprise me that he's not wanting to play. He got his money. Why would he play? I saw an article that was like describing how it's like you give a child $230 million. Yeah, he's not going to do anything for the rest of his life because he's got the money now. What is he? What's the point? And that's Deshaun Watson. His shoulder hurts, and the training staff's like, well, you should get a massage, and he's like, that's a slippery slope for me, you guys. Like, I shouldn't
That's
be
like
doing the
that's like
massage
talking
thing,
to a crack addict and going just like, well, just have a little bit of energy.
right?
It's like,
Just a teeny little bit.
yeah.
Yeah, no, and it does. It feels like Deshaun Watson just doesn't care. Like he doesn't want to play. That's what it looks like. That's the vibe you get from him, and that's what I said at the start of the year. Everybody's like, Deshaun Watson is back. This Browns team is going to be great with him, and I was like, guys, pump the brakes. Like this isn't
I
going to be
needed
the
to
same.
see what Deshaun Watson was going to be this year to make it definitive. I
I
thought he
know.
was going to be better for sure than what we've
Yeah.
seen this year, but I needed to fully be convinced, and you know what, I haven't, and I'm kind of pretty much back on your side of things where it's like,
Yeah.
homeboy just hasn't gotten it done, and
And that's what I say about the Browns. The Browns are more dangerous in situations like they are right now than when they've got a complete team. Because they're running with a backup, which almost makes them underdogs. There's not as much drama or controversy. It was like last year with Jacoby Brissett. He was running that team well.
mhm.
Like they should have just been like, fuck, we shouldn't have traded for Deshaun Watson. We should have just gone with Jacoby Brissett and then spent all that extra money on other pieces for the defense and
to
the
help
offense.
build your
We
team.
would have been right. They could have been a contender. But no, they keep this organization shoots themselves in the foot all the time. And that's just it. It's like Pittsburgh Steelers. It's only a matter of time before Myles Garrett does too much, gets himself hurt, and then this Browns team is just going to drop off a cliff.
You know,
And mhm.
continue.
It's hard to tell when that's going to happen. I think there was too much emotion last week, and the Browns are going to come into this game a little bit drained because of the way that one went last week for them, and the Seahawks are going to take advantage of that. And I think we might finally see a bit of a breakout game from Jackson Smith and Jigba. He's about due. It's been almost half the season now. We haven't seen a ton from him. I know Kenneth Walker hasn't been practicing, but I'm hopeful he can go forward and play this weekend because this Seahawks team has been fun to watch, and I think they're gonna put up a good game against the Browns. I think it's gonna be tight, but I think the Seahawks will win.
Yeah, I'm kind of on that same side here, but going back a little bit towards the conversation that you were having of like maybe they should have just kept with Jacoby Brissett, maybe they should have kept with Baker Mayfield because I know again I know you aren't a Baker Mayfield fan, but who was the last quarterback for the Cleveland Browns to win a playoff game? Baker
Well,
Mayfield.
yeah.
And that season of Baker
Mhm.
Mayfield, the first year of their head coach, I'm forgetting his name off the top of my head, but that was the best season Baker Mayfield had looked. And then he dealt with injuries the year after, and then they were just like, okay, this guy sucks. Well, yeah, because he was dealing with injuries the entire season. Like, is he, this franchise-defining guy? We don't know, but all you're saying to me is that you looked at a guy who won your first playoff game in Lord knows how long since Bill Belichick was the head coach of the Cleveland Browns in their first uh, alliteration of the team. Like you had to lose your team to Baltimore, and then you came back, and like you haven't been able to win since, and that was the first guy to do it. He has one season due to injury, and you're like, okay, bye, bye, bye. We'll go after a criminal instead of you. It,
Yeah. But
like,
I said it then too. That is this Browns organization. They make mistakes. They shoot themselves in the foot. They find any way they can to lose, and that's why eventually that's what will happen with this current team. Sure, they might have one of the better defenses, but like I said, Miles Garrett can only do it by himself for so long. We
yep.
saw it with T.J. Watt. He went down last year, and the Steelers just couldn't win without him. And that's what will happen with this Browns team. If Garrett gets hurt or goes out, this
They're done.
Browns team won't win another game.
Which just shows how impressive Miles Garrett has been, not only this year. And I know I said this to you earlier in the year, and you kind of looked at me like, "Shut up, stop it."
Mhm.
But Miles Garrett is making a serious case for Defensive Player of the Year.
Yeah.
And you didn't like it before, but I think you kind of with that, yeah, you're a little bit more agreeing with me now.
Yeah, up to this point, he's definitely in those top three talks for me for sure. Like he's in the discussion there. He's got to keep performing the rest of the season for this to happen. But I mean, I still wouldn't put him as the number one yet.
Who would you have as number one currently at the moment? And
You know who I would have as number one. The same as everybody has as number one right now.
Micah
T.J.
Parsons.
Watt. No, T.J. Watt, man.
I know it's just a lot easier and more fun for me to mess with you. But moving forward, how quickly did you choose the Chiefs over the Donkeys? I mean Broncos.
Pretty quick.
Yep, yep.
Yep.
Broncos
Pretty quick.
bad, Chiefs good. I'm
Yep.
not gonna watch this game mostly because I will be working, but
Fair.
and I also don't really want to watch Taylor Swift.
Is she supposed to be at the game?
I don't know. I've just
Oh.
kind of boycotted Chiefs games at the moment just because I don't want to see Taylor Swift, Brittany Mahomes, and the other Mahomes brother, Jackson Mahomes, all hanging out. I'm like, that is just a melting pot of just vomit spewing garbage, in my
See,
opinion.
the latter two names, yeah, I can't stand the whole Brittany Mahomes, Jackson Mahomes, like they drive me nuts. But for me, being that I have Travis Kelce on my team, on my fantasy team, I look and I'm like, is Taylor going to be there? Is he going to be putting up over 100 yards this week? Because when she's there,
He's
he balls
going
out.
awesome. Yeah.
Right? And so
Yeah.
like that's for me. I'm like, yeah, fuck that. Like let's throw some Taylor Swift on. Let's get the game going. This is a guaranteed win for me in fantasy football when she's there now. So I'm all for it.
Yeah, no, I'm just so over it, man. Like I'll say this. I have nothing I don't sit back and say Taylor Swift has terrible music. It's Her music is not for me. It was
Yep.
never designed to be for someone like me. I don't really care for it. I don't think it's neither good nor bad. It's just not my genre of music, which I think is fine to say. But when it's being
See,
shoved down your throat, like how it is the last couple
hmm
years, even before she got with football, and now that she's here, I'm like, man, I'm not. I'll tell you what I'm thinking when we're off air, but
yep.
it's just I just don't care anymore. It's like, fuck.
And I mean, I'm sure I know what you're thinking because there's a lot of guys at work that are thinking the same thing, and I tell them the same thing. It's like you're hating on her for what Roger Goodell and the NFL are doing. It's them that are shoving her down everyone's throats.
Yep.
It's not her. It's not Travis Kelce. It's not the fact that they're in a relationship. They're two fucking people that, they're like, hey, she's hot. Oh fuck, he's hot. Let's bang.
Yeah.
That's all it is.
And I'm not
And
hating on
I,
her.
I've
I'm
got a
not
fucking
hating on
Taylor
her.
Swift playlist for work now. Anytime I'm working with some of those bros, I'm like, oh fuck, let's get the Swift on.
But
And it just
you know
pisses
me.
them
I'm
off,
I'm
and I
not
love
hating
it.
on Taylor Swift. It's just I'm kind of tired of seeing her.
You're over it. I get
Yeah.
that. Yeah. And I'm over aspects of it. Like I'm getting tired of like, oh, Isaiah Pacheco got a touchdown. Like, let's watch him. Why are we watching Brittany Mahomes and Taylor Swift dance?
Yeah.
Let's watch the guy who did the touchdown celebrate.
Eh,
That's the part that I'm over. It's like I want to see the players that are playing the game. Like, fine, she's here, great.
I think
Commercial break,
I think at the
sure.
beginning of the game, be like, oh, she's here. And if
Yep.
Travis Kelce does a spectacular play or gets a touchdown, yeah, maybe show her celebrating. But exactly to what
Exactly.
you're saying,
Yeah,
I don't need to
when it's the
see it
other guy,
after every third play. Just like, oh,
right?
what's she
Like
doing in the box right now? Oh, she's taking
yeah.
a drink of her cocktail.
Which great if it's the refs are reviewing a play, I'd rather look at her than Andy Reid.
Are you sure?
So
Big Red?
yeah, yeah. Like those situations. Yeah, it's just when there is a football play on the field, let's watch the football.
Yes.
That
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 is
is
the only
where
part
I'm
where
at.
I'm getting aggravated with it. Is it's like I want to watch the players celebrate their touchdown because they did the thing.
Yeah, no, and that's 100% where I'm at, and that's entirely my point moving forward. Is that I don't care if she's there. I don't care that the media is talking about her. Sure, it's
Yep.
fine. It's two of the biggest side. It's like arguably the most famous female in the world going and dating one of the most
Yep.
famous males, at least in North America. And it's like they're deciding to go at it. It's like sure, cool, fun, interesting story. I don't need to see her every other play.
Yeah, no, I feel you, man. But it gonna be real funny when if they split up. She's gonna write a song about him and the NFL, and she's gonna drag it and all that. But she's officially a billionaire now. She could be real fucking petty and be like, you know what? You broke my heart. I'm buying the Kansas City Chiefs, and I'm trading you to the fucking Browns.
Well, here's the thing: is that Travis Kelce is 34 years old.
Yeah,
If that were the case where she buys the team, he's just gonna be like, I'm just gonna retire. Like
yeah,
the career that I have built right now, I'm going to Canton, baby.
yeah.
Like this thing, like I'll say this, like Travis Kelce, he's one of those guys where before Taylor Swift, he was going to be immensely successful after his football career. But ever since dating Taylor Swift, he's going to be even more successful because we're talking about guys that could potentially be movie stars after their
hmm
career, kind of like what we've seen with John Cena and Dwayne The Rock Johnson. Travis Kelce, I can look at and very easily being like, oh, he's going to be the next comedy action star that goes out there and is just killing it and that
Well, I
only made it
mean,
more successful due to Taylor.
yeah, he's already had that personable type of uh life. I mean, when he first came into the league, they had an entire dating show around him that was like fucking Rock of Love, but for Travis Kelce.
50
So
women, one woman from each
right,
state, just all trying to
exactly.
date
So it's
him.
not like he's unfamiliar with this,
Yeah.
and this it's perfect time for him. That's just it. He's nearing his retirement, and she is just taking off in her career right now. And let's be real, if not for this relationship, the discussion about this Broncos Chiefs game would have been all of about 3.7 seconds.
It would
And
have
we've
been how
talked about it
quickly
for
did
almost 10
you
minutes
pick
instead.
the difference is how quickly did you pick the Broncos? Oh, it's pretty damn or the Chiefs. Oh, same here. Move on. Yeah, for sure.
Right? Exactly. And instead, we talked about it for almost 10 minutes. So, like, it, at least it's giving us something to talk about when the Chiefs play these bad teams.
Yeah. Moving forward, where we see the Ravens taking on the Cardinals, and this is just one of those games where Cardinals again they have been a lot better this year than I think a lot of people would have given them credit for. They've been hanging in the games, they just haven't been able to win them. But the Ravens, they're gonna walk in there, and I think they're gonna stop the Cardinals and say, "Listen, our defense has been playing very, very good this year. Roquan Smith is playing like a pissed off bear, you know, going off to his former team."
Yep.
But yeah, I just don't think the Cardinals are going to be able to do much of anything against this Ravens team.
I have to agree. You know me. It's an AFC North rival. Fucking hate the Ravens. I am hoping that this is just a repeat of the Cowboys, and this is where the Cardinals get their second win of the season. That is my hope. Of course, there's a lot of drama going on right now. Kyler Murray has been cleared. He is fully able to play, and the Cardinals are like, nah, you can just stay home and play Call of Duty. And
Well, there
so,
have been reports saying that they're going to move on from him at the end of the year,
yeah,
which I kind of
well,
knew was going to happen. Like I was even talking about that like
yeah.
week 1.
Well, and that's what I'm wondering if it's going to be at the end of the season, or if maybe they're trying to find a suitor here at the trade deadline. Because
I would say it's at the end of the year, just because
more
I
likely,
just don't know who is gonna even look to trade for Kyler Murray at this point. Obviously,
Giants.
they would have to bring him in. Well, they're already paying a quarterback a lot of money,
Yeah,
and
true.
like that's the thing is that Kyler Murray is that he has a lot of money currently allocated to him, and like which team is going to go out there? It's not going to be the Jets because they're already paying Aaron Rodgers a bunch of money. You know, it's not going to be the Giants again. They're paying a lot of money to Daniel Jones. It's not going to be the Vikings or the 49ers. It's kind of one of those weird
Well,
things where
keep in mind though that the Cardinals are likely going to have to retain a lot of that salary
true
just to get rid of him.
without a
It's
doubt,
what's
but
going to have to happen. So I mean, there are possibilities out there. I mean, you've got Commanders. You know, you talked about the Falcons and how Ritter's not the guy. There's options out there. They're just gonna have to take very little in return. But no matter when they move on from him, they're gonna take very little in return.
ultimately I don't even think a team trades for him. I think they just cut him at the end of the
Yeah,
year. Like that would not be a thing that shocks me at
maybe
all.
swap quarterbacks with the Broncos.
Do you think the Cardinals want Russell Wilson? Mr. Broncos country, let's ride.
Russell Wilson has better stats this year than Patrick Mahomes. It's the rest of the Broncos that suck.
I don't know. I'm still not sold.
No, I get that, and yeah, it's not Russ of old, but he's looked better this year. Everybody's shitting on Russell Wilson. It's not him this year, and that's just it. But going back to the game we're talking about, I hope the Cardinals somehow manage to beat the Ravens because the Ravens are too busy looking forward to a future matchup with somebody. That's all I can hope for.
But you're picking the
But
Ravens though.
I am.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I need them to stop winning them because, you know, I I need all these AFC North teams to stop winning because I
It's
don't think
definitely
my
making it
Steelers can
harder
keep
for
winning
your
this consistently.
Well, because how many wins does the Steelers? They have 3 wins, correct? Or do they
Four.
have
We're
four?
sitting
Okay,
at 4-2. The Ravens are at 5-2. So,
five and
I
two. The
mean, in
Browns are four and
reality,
two.
we're at pace with them as up to when they take their bye week.
Yeah, yeah,
And we've got we've got the tie break against them right now as well because we've beaten them. So that's why it's like I need them to pick up another loss at this point because we still have the Bengals twice coming up at some point, and with Joe Burrow looking the way he's looking, I don't really see my Steelers beating them twice,
yeah.
possibly even beating them once.
It's definitely going to be tough. But speaking of the Cincinnati Bengals, they are taking on the Brock Purdy San Francisco 49ers. And the 49ers back-to-back losses here. And Brock Purdy obviously cleared, officially saying that he is playing. That happened, luckily, through my Twitter scrolls throughout our cast. That was said to he is indeed going to be playing this week. He was cleared for concussions. Um, this is gonna be a real. This was a tough game for me because, as you know, and as everyone who listens knows, I am probably the biggest Joe Burrow fan. That's not, a Cincinnati Bengals fan. I have a Joe Burrow jersey. I was a fan of him when he was at Ohio State, even though he didn't really play. I've been a fan of this guy for a long time, and this is a tough game for me because the 49ers the last couple weeks have been so bad, and the Bengals have really started to take that next step. I
Yeah,
don't
this
I
was
don't know I don't know who I'm picking in this one.
yeah,
Right
it
now
was
I
a tough one
currently
for me.
have the 49ers, but I genuinely don't know if I can keep the 49ers with just how good the Bengals have lost. But when I look at the Bengals, their defense hasn't been that great. So with Brock Purdy, if he can have the weapons around him in, Christian McCaffrey, he's been automatic for a touchdown every single game that he's played for the 49ers. George Kittle is still George Kittle. He's an animal. He's a monster. You get some of those receivers going. I don't know if Deebo Samuel is going to be playing. I think he's out. But it's one of those things of I don't know, man. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I get where you're coming from. This was one of the tougher ones for me this week as well. The fact that Brock Purdy is cleared and will be playing now, that is a best case scenario for the 49ers. Because I was looking at this week and I'm going, oh man, Sam Darnold is going to come in. He's going to ball out because that is the type of situation that Shanahan has built for quarterbacks, that it doesn't matter who you are, you're going to succeed. And then all of a sudden, the Niners are thrust right back into the quarterback controversy of, oh, who's better? Is it Trey Lance? Is it Jimmy Garoppolo? Now it's going to be, oh, should Brock Purdy or Sam Darnold?
Yeah.
And that would just be the worst case scenario for the 49ers. So the fact that Brock Purdy is playing is great for them. I just, Joe Burrow's looked so good, and they're coming off of a bye. Joe Burrow's feeling healthy finally. So, like, him and Jamar Chase, it's going to be a shootout. And I feel like Joe Burrow has better control of the game to be able to win in the end, as opposed to
Brock
Brock
Purdy.
Purdy, who's got to lean on other guys for that. Joe Burrow can stand in there and go, I'm going to win this game by throwing it to this guy, by throwing it to that guy, whoever it may be. Brock Purdy has to get in there if he's trying to win it and go, I've got to find Kittle. I've got to find McCaffrey. I've got to find one of those guys, because without those two, I'm not winning this game.
Yeah.
And that's what it is. Burrow is like, without me, we're not winning this game. Brock Purdy's going, without them, I'm not winning this game.
Without a doubt.
And for that reason, that is why I think the Bengals are going to continue this slide that the 49ers are on and hand them a loss at home. And the Bengals are going to keep their climb. And that, I don't know if the Bengals are going to lose another game between now and the Super Bowl, to be honest.
I'll go with you. I'm gonna switch my pick to the Bengals.
No.
I again, for me, it's just because of Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase, aka Mr. 7-Eleven. He's always open. It's yeah. Now moving over to a little bit of an easier game to choose, where we have the Chicago Bears on Sunday Night Football heading into LA to take on the Chargers, and I have the
It's
Chargers
Tyson
winning
time.
this. I have the Chargers winning this one.
Really? You're not going to go with your undefeated quarterback?
I love the story of Tyson Bagent.
It is a unique story, man.
You heard me talking about Tyson Bagent all the way in training camp for the Bears.
Yeah.
The second he signed as an undrafted free agent, I said this guy is going to make the team. If you knew his story at that point, which pretty much only Bears fans did, because only Bears fans actually looked at it and went, "Oh, this kid Div 2 from Shepherd, 159 passing touchdowns. NCAA record for touchdowns." He won the Heisman Trophy at the Div 2 level, and he was in the running for it 3 out of the 5 years he was a starter, or he played in college. Then again, one of his 4 years, or one of his 5 years, it was canceled due to COVID. So
Yep.
basically, 3 out of the 4 years that he actually played, he was in the running for the Div 2 Heisman. That is how good of a player that he is. You listen to his father, the 25-time arm wrestling world champion or something like that. Just an absolute energy. Like, if you want to take an energy drink and put it into a person, that's Tyson Bagent's father. But like, this dude is such a great story. And you know what? I liked what I saw from him last week, but the Chargers are going to win this game. And I'll talk a little bit more about that confusing quarterback situation a little bit later in our air quotes ranty section once we get
Yep.
towards that a little bit later. But for me, when I look at this matchup, I go, okay, the Bears did a decent job with Max Crosby, but now they have to go up against Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack. That's going to be a lot harder of a test for this offensive line and this young quarterback who has only gone up against, so-so defenses so far. They have a lot better weapons in the secondary, and then Justin Herbert. This defense has played a lot better this year throughout the year, but they haven't faced a guy in Justin Herbert's ability. But the issue is that Brandon Staley is such a dog shit coach to the point where you're just going, man, like the Chargers. We talked about with Josh Allen earlier how when you have that type of guy as a quarterback, you're thinking that you can win every single week. You should be thinking the exact same thing with Justin Herbert because he is one of those guys. But with Brandon Staley as a head coach, you're sitting there every week going, we could easily lose this game. But I think the Chargers walk away with a victory here.
Yeah. I mean, every week that goes by, the statement of Justin Herbert is just Philip Rivers with a better pullout game becomes more and more true. Because, like, up to this point, almost every week I've been going, yeah, Chargers, and they've got the same record as the Bears now. Except they've had the bye week, so they have one fewer loss. But
Yep.
like win-wise, like both teams have won 2 games.
Mm-hmm.
This is just insane. The Chargers were supposed to be good, and they're not. I had a hard time with this game because I don't have faith in either team to win. This feels like Bears Broncos was a few weeks ago. And it's frustrating to have to pick this again on a Sunday night game. Like ultimately I'm also going to go with the Chargers just because on paper they seem to have more talent. But if I'm being real, the Bears have more heart. And it makes me wonder if the Bears are going to be able to finally string 2 wins together this year. I flip-flopped on this one, man. I really did. Just because the Chargers find ways to lose. And as you pointed out earlier, DJ Moore, one of the best wide receivers right now. If Bagent finds a way to get him involved in this game, the Bears are going to win. Which I feel like you're picking the Chargers mostly because you want the Bears losing at this point, just so you can get a better draft pick. Because you don't have playoffs. At this point, there's no point in going 6-9 or 6-10 or whatever it ends up the final record would be. Like you almost don't want that. because you've got that extra draft pick. So I get where you're coming from there. I just it was so hard for me to pick. I flip-flopped on this one. I'm gonna pick the Chargers, but I will not be surprised in the least if the Bears manage to pull this one out.
I'll talk about the Bears once we finish this conversation with
Yep.
the Lions and Raiders. I have the Lions over the Raiders. The Lions stumbled last week. They just got their teeth kicked in. I think this Dan Campbell led team, they're gonna look at this and go, okay, we got punched in the mouth.
Yep.
We got a baseball bat to the face. We're gonna get up. We're gonna look at this Raiders team who just lost to the Bears, and we're gonna do even worse things to them. That's kind of my opinion to this. The Raiders, the fact that they have 3 wins this year, you're just kind of sitting back going like, damn, they have 3 wins and they're playing this poorly. Jimmy Garoppolo is slated to be back, but yay, Jimmy Garoppolo. That definitely inspires confidence in the hearts of Raiders fans. I know, because I have one as a parent who's a Raiders fan, and it's going, I go, hey, how do you feel about Jimmy Garoppolo? The nervous kind of like,
Same way they felt about Derek Carr, basically.
pretty much. But yeah, I have Lions over Raiders.
Yeah, the Lions have to bounce back here because that was horrible last week against the Ravens. Like, granted, the Ravens have looked good, but not that good. That should have been a much closer game. That should have been a competitive game.
Yep.
I don't know what happened to the Lions there. It's like they just forgot to show up because there's no reason the Ravens should have won that easily.
No.
They do. They have to bounce back. If the
Yep.
Lions lose this game, that for me automatically takes them right out of the contention for being a contender for the Super Bowl at the end of the year. They're
Yep.
still going to win the division.
Oh yeah,
But
they're going to be a playoff
they'll
team
lose.
for sure.
Yeah, they'll lose out quickly in the playoffs if they lose this game as well. But yeah, I also am picking the Lions to bounce back.
Yeah. So now moving forward to our top 5 and bottom 5 teams, and this week, obviously, the top 5 I feel got shaken up a lot more
Yep.
than what we would have initially expected it to be. Bottom 5 realistically still about the same with most of the teams there. But Sterling, start us off with your top 5 with pick number 5.
Well, with pick number 5, as much as I bloody hate them after everything, I had to go with the Ravens, man. The Ravens have snuck into my top 5. You know, they dominated the Lions last week. You know, they're on a 2-game win streak at this point after losing to the Steelers. And they look to be finding their rhythm. Whether that continues, whether they add a piece going into the trade deadline here, if they pick up someone like a Derrick Henry, I could see them rolling for many weeks to come. But that is ultimately their weak spot, is that run game. And so they do have to figure something out there. Going past there to my 4th spot, I talked about it last week. They were sitting on my bubble, and they've made it now because of this, is Jacksonville Jaguars. They've won 4 games in a row. They have not lost a game in October this year. So depending on how things go tomorrow, they could bump it to 5 games. They've been sitting around my bubble for a while now. And it took a couple of those top teams finally losing multiple games for them to finally get in there, you know. And the Bills have fallen off. The Dolphins didn't look great last week, and so that's why I have the Jags finally getting up in there. At my 3rd spot, after losing their 2nd week in a row, I do have the 49ers falling down. I left them at my top spot last week because I felt like that first loss was due to injuries. Granted, that second loss, with finding out about the concussion when it occurred, and the fact that interception and the bad passing happened after it, makes me think that might have played quite a significant part in the Niners losing that game. But either way, you lost 2 games in a row, so you don't deserve to be in that top spot anymore. So they're sitting at 3. My 2 team, the Eagles bounce back. They beat the Dolphins, you know, a high explosive offense. They held the Dolphins to almost no run game, which that they were the best run offense in the league at that point. And so the Eagles had their bounce back. They didn't fall out of my top five. They've moved back up into the number two spot. And then at my number one, I have no choice. Like they lost a game, sure, but they've won six in a row at this point. They have to be considered the top team in the league, and the Kansas City Chiefs.
Yeah. And you and I have the exact same top five. The only difference is that I have the Jacksonville Jaguars at pick number 5 and the Ravens at pick number 4. The sole reason is Jacksonville is on this 4-game win streak, but the Ravens just made a statement game. They walked out and said, you know what, we're gonna take a team that was arguably the number one team in the NFL up to that point, and they said, you know what, we're just gonna drop 33 points on you and not allow you to score anything. To me, that's a statement game, baby. Like, granted, that the true Lions that we've seen all year. Maybe we don't know, but the Lions seriously, or the Ravens, they made a big statement. And yeah, then I have the 49ers again. It was tough for me to keep them at that top spot last week, but they deserved it. The Eagles, they still have a lot of problems, in my opinion, on that offense. They're still trying to figure a lot of things out, and they're kind of sneaking by teams. And then yeah, it's the Kansas City Chiefs at number one. There's just really no other way to put it. The Chiefs, has it been perfect for them this year? God, no, without a doubt, no. But they are the best, the reigning Super Bowl defending champions. You can't have them not as your number one team in the NFL right now.
No. And
No.
that's just it. They hadn't been up to this point just because the Niners and the Eagles kept winning along with them, but they've faltered. The Chiefs took their one misstep in week 1, in game 1, and haven't looked back since. They've played some close games, but they always find a way to win.
It
They've had
hasn't been
injuries, they've had
perfect.
Kelsey go down, and they still find a way to win.
It hasn't been perfect for the Chiefs this year, but they found a way to get it done. Now,
Yeah.
Sterling, take us over to your bottom 5, baby.
Bottom 5, like you said, it's mostly the same. There was one team that I had left out of my week that has gone back in there just because they simply can't win games. So right now, your Bears have elevated themselves out of my bottom 5 finally. And so I've got the Broncos sitting at 28th, and followed by the Patriots, then the Giants. I've put the Cardinals in there at 31st, the second worst team, and then the Panthers at worst. And I mean, the Cardinals, yes, they've looked better than we thought, but they've still only won one game.
Yeah.
You can look as good as you want, but if you can't win games, you're a bad team.
Yeah. Without a doubt. And we talked about this last year. Yeah, sure, the Bears were probably the best looking 3-13 or 3-14 team that has ever existed with their play last year, but they were still the worst team in the NFL last year, so it doesn't really matter. I have the Bears at pick 28. They haven't done enough for me yet to get out of that spot. The 3 teams that they've looked good against have been the Commanders, who they beat, the Broncos, who they should have beat, and the Raiders again, who aren't that good. So, and every other team, they have looked pretty weak against. The Vikings, that was just a divisional game. It's kind of hard to tell with some of those lower scoring divisional games, but every other team, they've been bad. They played really, really bad, so that's the only reason I haven't had them sneak out of my bottom 5 just yet. This week against the Chargers, if they can get it, they're being catapulted out of that thing at light speed. At pick number 29 for me, it's the Donkeys. This team is just all sorts of bad. They beat the Packers, who are pretty much a bubble team for me on that bottom 5, and that makes me extraordinarily happy. But right now, the Broncos beating the Bears and the Packers, but everyone else looked terrible. They lost to the Commanders. They weren't able to get that done. They're going up against the Chiefs. They're probably going to get embarrassed yet again. And this is a team where, yeah, has Russell Wilson looked better this year? Yeah, but is it anything really to talk about, in my opinion? No. Then I have the Giants at pick number 30. This Giants team for me, uh, they're impossible to watch. When they had Daniel Jones in there, I'm not a Daniel Jones believer, and I've been saying that all year long. And I know Giants fans at the beginning of the year were like, "Oh no, Daniel Jones is a good quarterback." I was like, "No, dude, he's
No.
not. Stop thinking that way." And the Giants,
I
they've just,
prefer watching them with Tyrod Taylor.
yeah, me too, me too. I don't think they should go back to Daniel Jones. You're just paying, $40 million a season to a guy that can't play football at the quarterback position, which is ultimately going to be the Giants' downfall for the next couple of years because you can't really move on from him as much as you'd like. But then moving over to 31st, it is the Cardinals for me. Again, going back to what I was saying, the Bears were the best 3-14 team that has ever graced the football field. Still the worst team in football. And this
Yep.
Cardinals team right now is, 1-6 or 1-5. I can't remember exactly what it is, but they're a one-win team. Yeah, they've looked good, but they're not getting the wins, which ultimately, when you have the second fewest wins in the NFL, you have to be at the second worst spot. And then the team that is still looking for their first win, which I hope to God they do not get at any point in this year, it is the Carolina Panthers, who are currently winless, and I hope for nothing but failure from that team for the rest of the year.